This is the kind of the dirty little secret as we've developed as mediators this far. There are different barriers that we're having to face and overcome. And the barrier that we're facing now, we faced it really all along, but we're getting some critical mass here, is to recognize that your inner life is probably the most powerful tool that you have as a professional to help people who are in conflict.
If we don't know what's going on with ourselves, then everything comes out sideways. And I saw that in myself. Not only in my political practice, but in my relationships. I kind of felt like I was drowning.
Long after I had been a mediator and was good at it, I thought, this is actually personally a terrible thing for me to be doing. Speaking to the coping skills I learned to defend myself in a really dysfunctional environment.
How do you work with someone in an effective way when you have all these feelings coming up? As a lawyer, you don't learn how to know what's going on with you.
Typical day like today, I show up, I come rushing in, and when I walked in the room, I'd leave my feelings at the door. That's basically what would happen, and as they would arise, I would shove them out of the way. On the outside, people saw me as being pretty calm and pretty settled. On the inside, I was, I think, relatively troubled.
We see people at their absolute most difficult moments of their life. We have all learned, those of us who learn to be professionals, to keep our distance. A professional keeps your distance from your client. It's unprofessional if you let yourself get close to the client. I can give you a great game face that will show you that I'm not there. I'm a neutral. I'm a non-judgmental person. But it turns out, like it or not, even if we're trying our best to put that mask on, we have reactions to these people. And those reactions we have to those people matter tremendously. What we do with those reactions will have enormous implications for what happens with their lives, and by the way, what happens with our lives. I'd always heard, as a mediation teacher, that people either are born mediators or not, that you really can't teach the central mediation skill, the ability to tap your intuition. And it seemed to me that that idea was wrong. When I came to that realization, I immediately thought of my old friend and colleague Norman Fisher, who's a Zen teacher.
I'm used to thinking of everything that I do as being completely useless. So the idea that somebody's making use of it, making a difference in the world, is thrilling and surprising.
We designed a program enlisting the busiest and most successful conflict professionals we knew to make a 9-month commitment to a daily practice of learning the art of self-reflection and applying it on a daily basis with a lot of support to see what difference that would make with their clients. They all had a sense that in the work they were doing to try to help people in conflict, that the key somehow was their own self-awareness, and that by unlocking that they would really become better conflict professionals.
That's how we all have a similar goal. We want to do better. We want to do better work.
I wanted to shorten the time frame between knowing something was going on, to identify what that something was, and then third, to be able to respond to that.
It's not like I'm opposed to the splitting because on ideological grounds. The mind-body split, divorcing ourselves from our moral compass, it's because it doesn't work.
And it also sounds like it's not true.
Right. It's true as long as you can keep a little insulated piece of ground where you don't have to feel anything, but you can't actually do that.
Using your own self and your own personal feelings and what's going on the inside, that's necessary.
This is an immersion that you're not going to find someplace else.
I knew that it was something I was being invited into, that it was different and unique, that nobody else was doing it, and it was going to be like an experiment.
Norman and I devised this rigorous program where people would have a variety of practices to help them learn to use the muscle of reflecting on themselves and understanding themselves especially when they're working with people in conflict.
I think the buddies were the centerpiece of the whole process.
Having a buddy was what I needed to be able to make my practice regular.
Maybe we talked once a week.
We would talk about our work. We would talk about how we feel in our cases.
I feel like we're really helpful to each other, and we're able to be really deep about kind of spiritual and personal and reflective issues.
Rather than the them, it's really how we are doing in relation to the outside.
I've known Peter forever.
We used to have lunch, but it was, relatively speaking, on the surface.
What's going on? How are the kids? He was one of those people who had not been primarily self-reflective.
All the energy that I was putting into keeping the feelings away was really almost like being at war with my own feelings. So here was conflict outside with the clients that I'm interacting with, and then conflict within me that was trying to work on trying to keep the feelings away. It just made it worse. The shift, which seemed very counterintuitive to me at the time, was to embrace the feelings.
Now we have lunch once a week. It's like a completely different person that I'm having lunch with. I mean, our conversations are completely different.
We really, stay with the basic buddy framework.
We would ask each other the questions.
What's going on for you?
What are you thinking about this?
What were you experiencing when you were experiencing that?
What judgments are you having? What do you imagine is going on for the other person?
Just be a buddy and listen and get as deep as possible.
It's been a complete change.
July 23rd, 2007. Today I notice ease. I think it was the writing that gave me the insight to see it, to feel it, to acknowledge it, to admit it, and then to begin the process of working with it.
I remember the first time I actually had that flowing writing happen, and it was really exciting. It's like, whoa, where's all that coming from? The writing has really helped me to focus and look inside about my part of these relationships. Joan is an extremely intelligent victim, yet not fully. She really wants the divorce over, yet when settlement's on the table, she can't let go of something. She feels wronged and hurt. She gave up a lot during the marriage. She's going to have less of her child. She can't see or acknowledge how she's contributing to keeping this going. What is my part? What am I avoiding or denying? My family worries about me working too hard. I avoid the conversation, deny any impact on my health. I'm working on this issue of denial, but it's slow progress. It's just easier to avoid things. It starts with the client, but it ends up with me, and then it changes my relationship to the client. Instead of judging her for who's going through way harder stuff than me, I can see how I do that in my own life, and it makes me more accepting, which I think makes her feel more comfortable. And at the same time, if I look at my part, I can call her on her part without having a double standard, and I think that somehow that comes across.
The main question of whether people will be stuck inside the conflict trap that brought them to some outside professional will depend on whether or not we can understand that inner part of the conflict trap, and we can't do that from our outside. We have to do that from our inside. A core concept that we came to develop with the help from our colleague Jack Himmelstein was what we call the V, a systematic and progressive effort for people to deepen their understanding of what was happening to them, particularly when they had strong emotional reactions to clients, and to reconnect to their clients from a place of connection and compassion.
What did you understand the V to be?
I understand it to be a tool for figuring out what's going on with me in relation to a client or another person. It could be another lawyer, whatever.
You're starting with a conflict.
What's going on with me in reaction to this situation and these people?
Feel those feelings, there they are.
Centered and focused. My feet are on the ground.
Coming into the body,
feeling how I'm feeling. Am I uptight?
Breathing, identifying particular emotional experiences like anger.
It's like, oh, I'm making judgments here.
Or frustration or disappointment.
Or, I don't like this person.
And I'm really here and I'm not thinking about other things.
And I can be honest with myself about that and not like say, oh, I don't want to have that feeling.
Feeling what they feel like physically.
I go down the V.
So it's like a little checklist that I can go down. Okay, what's happening here, here, here.
And it's like I have to get past something.
And then it comes to understanding.
Am I angry with you? Yeah, but are you a person? Yeah.
Okay, now I know what to do with that.
And then
you can go to the options.
On the upslope, it's kind of like, and? Kind of like that.
That at least has the potential of opening up my eyes in a way that then allows me to approach them in a different way.
It's like lightning, it's the process of SCPI has shortened the time between having the feeling, identifying the feeling, understanding what it does and how I should respond to it, and then proceeding from there.
The group developed a very cohesive bond, and after 9 months realized that the support that they were giving and getting from each other was absolutely critical to their being able to sustain their practices.
When I feel the community support for me, that it really leads me to want to be more of a community of support for others. And I also see that you are that for each other. And I also see, in some ways now, you're getting it back from the people that you're bringing it to.
I had a client that did call me on the carpet for something. I remember accessing the feeling, and the feelings I was feeling was defensive. I really needed to stand up for what I thought needed to be said. But getting in touch with those feelings, knowing that they were moving me towards defensiveness, I was just able to be honest in a genuine way. Then it was a whole different discussion. Then it wasn't us beating each other up or her beating me up and me defending myself. It was suddenly we were connected, and then we became real.
Yeah.
And it's such a different conversation. SCPI has made me a better mediator, not only because of how I feel when I come out of a session, but how I see my clients reacting.
My goals had been to shorten the time for realizing things, and that's definitely happened. In a meeting, I'll realize that I'm having a reaction, I can figure out what it is, and I can use that information. It really can and does make a difference in how you relate and how you work, because it deepens our work, it deepens our relationships, personally and professionally. And it's hard to stick to.
We need each other to be able to sustain what is really something that kind of goes against the grain of how most people go about thinking about conflict resolution.
I've gotten to know a number of people from the SCPI group in a much deeper way than I ever would have in a much shorter amount of time. Susan seldom spoke in complete sentences. She would start to say something, she would get distracted and go in another direction, then get distracted again, and then get distracted again. And sometimes it was a little difficult to follow her because you weren't quite sure where she was going to be next. That changed.
I am a much better conflict professional. It was really a period where I grew up and became a wiser person and really started feeling like, wow, this is my place now.
She was much more identified as a mediator in her role as a mediator. She seems much more relaxed.
How can they do that?
And just very connected. Very connected to what's going on in the room.
Let me ask you a question. Have you two been in court? And you're really there with them, and you really get them, and you say, here's what I think is going on. When you have that aha moment, like, yeah, I am really feeling like that. And it changes, the room changes.
You can teach the core of mediation skill, and they can learn it. And it isn't simply a question of whether they have it or they don't. We'll continue to offer these opportunities for people that haven't had the chance to do it, to see what this real relationship is between the inside and the outside. This is, I think, at the core of what effective conflict resolution is about.
If you take this seriously, and you follow the structure, it would be really difficult not to change.